So we actually know very little of Minoan civilization. They're a society that predates the classical Greek time period, and they were present in what we refer to as the Bronze Age. It's thought that sometime around 3100 BCE, they developed from some sort of Neolithic indigenous population. And then around 2000 BCE, sophisticated urban communities started to emerge. This video will surround the famous archaeologist that discovered and restored the Palace of Knossos, Arthur Evans. So without further ado, let's dive into the accolades and major criticisms of this world-renowned archaeologist. Archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans is most well known for his discovery of the Palace of Knossos, located on the island of Crete in Greece. The Palace of Knossos is an ancient archaeological site, and it's considered one of the most important and well-known Minoan sites dating back to this time period. Evans was an archaeologist, as was his father. 1 year after his father's passing, he inherited his father's fortune, bought the land on the island of Crete, and started excavation in 1900, which continued up until 1931. The most controversial aspect of his work was restoring the Bronze Age palace, the Palace of Knossos, which is also referred to as the Palace of Minos. Many of historians' beefs surround the notion that Evans made a lot of this stuff up. With little knowledge and hardly any evidence, he made major claims that he tried to pass off as legitimate. Okay, so oftentimes archaeologists find only portions of artifacts or historical sites, in which case they are often restored. The Parthenon in Athens is a prime example of this. So why is the Palace of Knossos such a big deal? And why are people so pissed off at Sir Arthur Evans? For starters, we have plenty of supplemental evidence of Greek civilization prior to the restoring of the Parthenon. Sir Arthur Evans was accused of manufacturing Knossos, pushing his own narrative on Minoan civilization rather than using his actual findings. One example of this would be the throne room, one of the most famous areas within the entire complex. Evans identified this particular room as the throne room because of its centralized location within the site and the presence of a raised stone bench alongside of a wall. Because of existing frescoes depicting various ceremonies, not only was he convinced, but he was assured that this stone bench was for an elite ruler during certain ceremonies. Maybe now the controversy starts to make sense. He potentially fabricated portions of this archaeological site based on his own perspectives and interpretation of the partial frescoes and his other findings. Evans wrote the book The Palace of Minos. By that time, he seemed fully convinced that the Minoan civilization had worshipped a single great mother goddess. But how did he come to that conclusion? In her article titled Two Knights and a Goddess, Cynthia Eller, with the Department of Philosophy and Religion at Montclair State University, argued that Evans was drawn to the figure of a mother goddess because he lost his own mother when he was only 6 years old. That's kind of a low blow, but is she completely wrong? Ehlers isn't the only scholar to call out Evans on his fictionalized interpretation of this ancient Cretan society. In a different journal entry, novelist Liz Bork weighs in on how influential Evans was. Her article discusses his role in shaping the perception of Minoan civilization through his excavation at Knossos and his influential publications. Well, let's face it, the guy seemed like he was pretty charming. Funny enough, much, if not all, of these potential manufactured takes took its toll on pop media and how Minoan civilization is being taught today, even in our classrooms. Evans' depiction of the Minoans as peaceful and united rulers was challenged by later research, which revealed evidence of internal divisions and defensive structures on Crete. Despite these findings, his romanticized portrayal stuck around for a very long time. In fact, some aspects still exist today. They shape popular perceptions of Minoan civilization. Bork goes on to explain in detail that Evans was influenced by his personal biases and political agenda, leading him to discount evidence that did not fit his idealized image of Minoan culture. As time passed, some of Evans' presumptions, such as the notion of a peaceful society, were challenged. From the book The Palace of Minos at Knossos, the authors Chris Garr and Rebecca Stefoff mentioned that in 1979, a pile of bones was discovered on a nearby mountainside at Knossos. The butchered skeletal remains provided solid evidence that Minoans may have indulged in either sacrificial offerings or even cannibalism. This completely contradicts the notion of a peaceful, angelic Minoan society as Evans sold. While Arthur Evans continues to face criticism, you kind of got to give it to the guy. The Palace of Knossos is currently the second most visited archaeological site in Greece, with the Acropolis being number one. Even though he may have BS'd nearly every aspect of his archaeological findings, the way in which it was restored draws global attention. I guess only time will tell whether Sir Arthur Evans was a charlatan or a pioneer.